What's going on, Detroit Lions fans? You got us here, real Detroit Lions fans. We're here after that great thing that happened over this past week. It was this little thing. I don't know if you guys heard about it. It's called the draft. So it was a very important draft for us this year, given that we were the third overall pick. We had a lot of draft capital going in and, a lot of holes to fill. So we're excited to see what's going to turn from that, what's going to come out of that. But today we have a special show for you guys because we have a guest here today, Kent Lee Platte. This is Mathbomb himself. You can't say his name in an airport. Kent, how's it going, man?
Fantastic, man. I never even considered the airport angle before. That's problematic.
Yeah, it is. Why don't you say some introductory words to people in the chat?
I don't have introductory words.
The name speaks for itself.
Exactly. He's just ready to drop the bomb. All right, Andrew, why don't you say hey to everybody in the chat?
Hey, we got Kyle Webb, Ryan Zarzecki. Sorry about that. Ed Whiting, Chris, Kool-Aid and Cornbread. Still love that name. And we got Truth Teller, DMAP Zoom, and you can call me Funk. What's up, fellas?
All right, and J-Mo, our fellow DSA member, joining us today. I appreciate you coming on, man. Say hey to people in the chat.
What's good, man? As I always say, Kool-Aid and Cornbread is the best name out here. Out of everybody that subscribed to DSA, Kool-Aid and Cornbread, you win the award. So excited to have Mathbomb on, man.
You can call me Funk is gonna have a disagreement, man. He always has a good name.
To be fair, I didn't have an intro, but I feel like we have to call him Funk now because we've had everybody intro and no one has actually called "You can call me Funk." So
exactly.
Hi, Funk.
Hey, Funk, what's up? No, this is AKA George Morgan, AKA Funky Nuts, AKA former Lions fan. He changes his name every week, it seems like. But for those of you who don't know Mathbomb, this is the man that is the inventor of the Raz score. I mean, I don't know how you know our channel if you don't know Mathbomb, but I had to say that, just in case you guys didn't put two and two together for some reason. He's the guy that's always on Twitter, super busy during this time. We're so excited and happy that you were able to come on here and, share your time with us. So just want to start off by saying thank you. I happen to listen to a couple of your shows or shows that you've been on already, namely Pride of Detroit, where you work, and you are part of that. You're a writer there. That's correct?
Yeah, I write for them.
Yeah. So I listened to that podcast, and that was, right after the draft. You guys were talking about some stuff. So we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to go one by one through the draft picks, and we just want to get your take on them and how you feel about them and their relative athletic score and pretty much all of the feedback you can give. We want to hear it. Okay. So we're going to start off with obviously the third overall pick, our first round pick, Jeffrey Okudah. So I wanted to start this off because you were on the roundtable a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and you got to see firsthand. We were definitely part of the Isaiah Simmons bandwagon. We were kind of one of the loudest groups shouting that we were going to get Isaiah Simmons, and I think that you predicted Okudah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people did as well. But we were one of the ones that definitely wanted Simmons. So, what was your initial reaction when we got Okudah and passed on Simmons, and there was no trade made?
Yeah, so there was a lot of people that wanted Simmons, no doubt. He's a talented player. But there's a lot of concern about what you can do with him depending on the coaching staff that you have. And Matt Patricia is one of those guys where he likes guys that are versatile, true, but he tends to like guys that are versatile in a couple of different ways. He doesn't use his players so dynamically that he can use somebody in every different way, which is why a guy like Isaiah Simmons didn't make much sense to me, because I felt like he'd be wasted in a way here. He'd get thrown into a middle linebacker role where he would be blitzing and occasionally roaming and doing the spy stuff and things like that, where you can take advantage of his speed. But I didn't see Matt Patricia as the guy that would put him at slot corner or drop him back into safety. That's not the type of role that he uses that type of player for. But Jeff Okudah is the exact opposite. He's a guy where he has an immediate jump-in role. Obviously, Darius Slay had left. That didn't really play much into it for me, because whether or not Darius Slay was here, the Lions needed another cornerback, somebody that they could rely on for the future. So They replaced Slay with Desmond Trufant, and now they still needed that other corner. Jeff Okudah is a very good man corner. He's a great man coverage corner. He can do zone as well, but primarily he's good in man. That's what the Lions run. He's a really good tackler, extremely intelligent. I know I raved about that on the roundtable about how well prepared he was for games and how smart he was as a football player. He's the type of guy that I knew Matt Patricia would be really in on. And there were a few moves that the Lions had made earlier that kind of bolstered a few of the spots for other players they had been looking at, including Isaiah Simmons. They brought in Duran Harmon to play that deep safety role. Maybe I just screwed his name up and got it mixed with somebody else. Anyway, the deep safety we traded for from the Patriots. He would play that role. Tracy Walker would move up into that role that Isaiah Simmons might have played. Jamie Collins for some of that linebacker work. They signed Danny Shelton to come in and play nose tackle, so that would eliminate a good portion of the role that you'd have for somebody like Derek Brown. But they didn't do any of that for the cornerback position. They left it pretty much open, relying on Desmond Trufant and last year's 5th round pick, Amani Oruwariye. And that doesn't scream very well prepared to me. So it just made sense. The article that I wrote immediately following was that Jeff Okudah was the only real choice. And I felt that way leading up to the draft and following. I was ecstatic that it felt really close. Like the last couple of minutes before the draft, it felt like Derek Brown was going to be the guy. And I was like, I am ready to be disappointed. And thankfully I wasn't.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things you just threw out there, and I definitely want to just jump at you real quick and
Sure.
kind of push back. And I'll let JMO and Andrew speak as well. But I just want to say this. I heard, Ryan Matthews on the show as well, also being very high of the pick of Okudah and saying the same things that you were saying, where like we wouldn't really know where to put Simmons. And I just don't understand that mindset. So if you could expand on that. But the reason I'm saying that is because we were a team last season that blitzed probably less than everybody else in the league. And what that meant was we were throwing our linebackers into coverage. And the issue was that was that, we had guys that were more of blitzing linebackers, like guys that were pass rushers and that had no experience or the capability of being coverage linebackers. And then it seemed like Simmons was that answer to that. So hearing you say that we wouldn't really know what to do with him, I mean, he was playing in the cornerback role and the safeties role. It seems like this guy can cover and he could run and be, he's so fast he could run stride for stride with the best of them. So my question is, why wouldn't he be a perfect fit if we're asking our linebackers to cover? And he seems like the greatest coverage linebacker to ever come out of any draft. And then not only that, but Okudah, I see the fit that you're saying. But with Amani there and with Trufant there, I guess now that we got Okudah, so this is a 2-part question. What do you think is going to happen with Amani? Because to me, he seemed like a starter, and Amani coming out of last year's draft was a day 2 prospect. So why is he kind of off the table and sidelined right now?
So to answer your first question, it isn't that the Lions wouldn't know what to do with Isaiah Simmons. It's that they would, but it wouldn't take full advantage of what he can do. I don't feel like the Lions under Matt Patricia would be using him in that every type of role. I think they would slot him specifically at that inside linebacker spot where they use Jared Davis. They would use him to do the exact same things that Jared Davis does. And throwing aside the question of whether or not that's early first round value, that's not using a player like Isaiah Simmons very well. That's not using all of his talents to the top. I think the problem isn't that the Lions wouldn't know what to do. It's that they would. It just wouldn't take full advantage of everything that he can do. It's kind of like buying a Ferrari for the radio. It's not taking advantage of what you could get for there. There's so many other things you could use that for than just a nice stereo. And that's why I feel that is. Now, as far as Amani, I loved Amani. Amani was my CB1 last year, and falling to the 5th round made me look really bad at first because I was so high on him as a prospect. But sometimes you look at a guy and you look past some of their flaws. And I think that is why Amani Oruwariye fell to the 5th round. I think some of the things that people had thought would not be that big of an issue, some of his anticipation issues, some of his issues as a tackler, those issues may have been a bigger deal than we had anticipated they would be. And it sucks that we don't get to see Amani Oruwariye as a top-tier starter coming in this year. He did look really well A couple of times when he came out last year, he definitely looked much better than a 5th-round rookie would look. But they might not think that he's ready to go day one. And that's the good news of having a guy like Trufant here, is Trufant's not going to be here forever. And I don't think he plays out his contract. A lot of guys that get contracts like his don't. They play a couple of years and then they have an out. So we're not going to see, Okuda and Oruwariye as the starters in 2020, but we might see that in 2021 or 2022. He'll still be under contract, likely facing an extension. Maybe they get him under an extension early before he becomes a starter. But I think that he just might need a little bit more seasoning than we had anticipated that he needs, and this gives him that opportunity.
Okay, I mean, that's definitely fair. I'm going to add another DSA member that just joined us, Nomis. What's going on, Nomis? Why don't you say hey to everybody in the chat?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing?
We're doing well. Mathbomb is just explaining to us why Okuda was the right pick. So I know that you just had a recent video saying, definitely defending the pick and being very positive about it. Do you have anything to ask Mathbomb about Okuda or like that? And same with J-Mo and Andrew too. Is there anything you want to add to what Mathbomb said?
I have a question. So everyone says, there were no trades available. And in my head, if I'm playing GM, I'm going to negotiate and work out a deal to trade back and still get my guy. I feel like Bob Quinn could have done a better job in actually trying to sell, moving back, or making a trade happen. What do you think about all that? The fact that people said there were no trades available and no one was looking to move up.
Yeah, and I definitely felt exactly like you did when the Lions were on the clock and they said they didn't have a trade. But the rest of the way that top 10 played out, it really looked like that was the case, because it wasn't just the Lions that were trying to trade down. The Redskins were trying to trade at a 2. They said they weren't right before the draft, but they were making calls. They were taking calls all the way up to the draft. The Panthers were trying to trade. The Cardinals were trying to trade. The Dolphins were trying to trade. The Chargers were trying to trade. A bunch of teams were trying to trade, and nobody was able to pull anything off. It wasn't just the Lions that weren't able to pull a trade. Nobody was in that top 10. And that tells me that he wasn't able to pull a trade off thing has a lot more meat to it than just saying, he failed to make a trade. Nobody could. And the way that those picks played out, it really seemed like nobody really had much of an offer, because if you had drawn, you get all those mock drafts every year with no trades, right? Which we always say, no trades. It's not even remotely realistic. But that's how the top 10 played out. Was no trades, and it fell pretty much in line, at least position-wise, with what you would have expected out of a draft like that. Now, the Giants surprised a little bit with who they took at number 4 with Andrew Thomas, but taking a tackle there was on most people's draft boards for them. So everything kind of played out how everyone expected it to, if there were no trades at all, and that's just how it worked out. So I don't think that they had a trade offer that was worthwhile, where they felt they could still get one of the players that they wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I don't know, man. I was saying this during the draft. Honestly, I'd rather offer Miami a 7th round pick to trade up. You know what I mean? Like, if they were going to trade up and take Tua or whoever quarterback they were going to take, and Giants were going to take a tackle, they weren't taking Okuda. So you would have had Okuda anyway, and you would have got a free 7th round pick. But I'm with you. There probably wasn't anything on the board. Miami was probably thinking, why would we move up? J-Mo, did you have anything to ask about Okuda and our 1st round pick to Mathbomb?
Yeah, I definitely have some things to ask. I was obviously one of the people that wanted Isaiah Simmons, and I have qualms about picking a corner that high. No corner has been picked that high since 1997, and he was very good in his first season. So I'm of the mindset when Okuda coming in here with our system that he kind of needs to be our number 1 corner or very close to elite to validate where we picked him. What do you think about that? And I also wanted to ask, if Bob Quinn couldn't get any trades, was Okuda always the right pick from the beginning?
So there's a couple parts to that question. As far as picking him that high, I have Jeff Okuda rated right up there with Jalen Ramsey, with Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson went 5th overall. I forget where Jalen Ramsey went, but it was really high. Those are really promising prospects, and they were really, really good. Jeff Okuda's right up there with him. The fact that he went 3rd overall instead of 5th is kind of a doesn't really mean much to me. It's still taking top 5, taking top 10. If you're taking that high, position wise, it generally goes, quarterback, defensive end, offensive tackle. But there's only one defensive end in this draft, and quarterback went number 1. So number 1, number 2 was those 2 top premium positions. The third quarterback off the board was a guy with a blown out hip and other injury issues. And then the rest, there was a bunch of offensive tackles that went in that area. So those higher ranked positions really did go in that area, but the Lions didn't need an offensive tackle. They just signed Halapoulivaati Vaitai. They have Taylor Decker they're expected to put into an extension, so they didn't really need that. They needed a pass rusher, but Chase Young was gone, and there was a huge drop-off until the next best pass rusher. So the Lions didn't have a need in those other positions that were ranked that high. It was really only between cornerback, that linebacker, which is generally not that high of a ranked position, or a nose tackle. So position-wise, it makes sense. As far as how well he needs to play, I think he will play really well, and you're totally right that he should play at a number 1 cornerback value. That's where you want a guy to play that you draft really high in the first round. If you draft him late in the first round, you want him to play to justify that pick. But he doesn't have to here. The Lions have Desmond Trufant here to be able to cover number 1 guys if they need to. If he comes along and he's playing really well right away, he'll probably take over those number 1 duties depending on the matchup. You're probably going to see that anyway, whether he's playing well or not, just to get his feet wet and throw him right into the fire. But you really want your high picks to play really well. This isn't like taking a tight end in the first round where you expect that year. Cornerbacks have came in the last 7 or 8 years and jumped right in to NFL defenses. Matt Patricia's defense is really complex, but as far as cornerbacks, you're manned up most of the time. There's not a lot of difference going from college to the pro in a defense where you man up all the time because it's just you versus the other dude. It's about leverage. It's about positioning. Those are the type of things that you take a guy 3rd overall if he already understands and he already knows. I think Jeff Okudah has that. I think he's going to do really well for this team.
I definitely have a follow-up to something you just said, because so you said that you're rating him as high as you're rating Patrick Peterson and Jalen Ramsey, and you're saying that this isn't this isn't supposed to be like a tight end situation. Like, this is supposed to be somebody that comes in and contributes right away, and that's things that we all want to hear. That'd be great. Like, I don't think I don't think any Lions fan would be upset if this guy came in and performed like Patrick Peterson or Jalen Ramsey. But the question I have for you is similar to Ebron, right? And, that's a swear word around these parts, but similar to Ebron, he came in with these super, super high expectations because a tight end wasn't taken in the top 10 for who knows how long. And same with Okudah, cornerback wasn't taken in the top 3 for like who knows how, since 19, whatever. So the question is, do you think that he might, from some of the negative Lions fans, get the Ebron treatment if he doesn't come in and perform up to par right away?
So I'm gonna leave the Eric Ebron as a person part out of this, because you take a head case in the top 10 and then you throw high expectations on him, and you're kind of getting what you paid for, right? But with Jeff Okudah, it's a little bit different. As a person, he's much different than somebody like Eric Ebron is. I keep talking about how well prepared he is, how intelligent he is as a player. That level of preparation is not just a guy that comes in and thinks, oh, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna own from day one. He knew going into this draft that there was a possibility that he could be taken 3rd overall. There wasn't a chance to him that he could be taken much less. He played with Chase Young. Chase Young didn't measure at the combine because he was getting ready for training camp. He didn't give a shit about the draft. He knew he was going high. Okudah did, but he wanted to compete and he wanted to do a few things. He did just those things and then shut it down because he didn't really care about doing the agility drills and stuff. He wanted to show that he was explosive because he knew he could do well in that area. There's always going to be high expectations. I've seen some people saying that Okudah should take number 20. Putting 3 Hall of Famers on your jersey is a little bit much as far as expectations go. But that's just what happens when you get drafted really high. I've seen people in Miami saying that Tua should be putting on Dan Marino's number and walking into Miami as their new savior. And it's like, yeah, why don't we tone it back a little bit? The expectations are already really, really high. We don't need to make them much higher. Lions fans don't have a whole lot of patience for guys that want to come along slow, the guys that want to learn. This isn't a guy that's going to sit here and clap back on Twitter against fans if they say something mean to him. He's been doing this for a while. He's been dealing with Michigan fans and Michigan State fans for a while. So he's used to that type of thing. I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. That said, on the field, it's a completely different thing. You put the guy on the field and he goes out and he talks all kinds of smack and he pushes his guys and goes as hard as he can against his opponents. But this is also a guy that didn't have a single penalty last year, despite all that. That's not the kind of guy that you can look at and say, oh yeah, he gets rattled easy.
Got you. You know what? Those are things I want to hear, and you're right. There are going to be expectations no matter what position. I just hope that he doesn't get that kind of treatment from the fans. If he gets burnt once or twice, it's going to happen to any rookie cornerback. But I think it's funny that Luke, you know Luke because you were on the round table. He's going crazy in the chat right now because he obviously did not like the pick at all. And I love Eric's response. Give it up, Luke. And I just wanted to take this moment to say that, listen, like, we are all diehard, passionate Lions fans. We're gonna have different opinions on these picks. We all want the Lions to succeed. So if you disagree with any of our opinions, just know that it's all from a place of love. And this whole thing is about disagreement. It's fine if we all disagree, but at the end of the day, we just want the team to succeed. So Nomis, why don't you, what do you have anything to add or to push back on for Mathbomb about the Okudah pick, or any questions you have for him?
I mean, to me, it's more of a comment, more so like as far as the third pick. Okay, let's say you're right. There was a trade possible with Miami, and let's say they still weren't going to give up 5 because we were going to get Okudah. It was better off to just take potentially those round 20 picks and let him potentially get off the board still, where we lose out on Okudah and Simmons at the same time. So my thing is, if he feels that there wasn't a draft trade, or maybe he didn't like what was offered, and he said that, it really doesn't matter, because if the Lions do get a trade pick, let's say we do trade up 5, lucky enough to take the pick, first off, we would still go get Okudah. The next pick would have been somebody that the fans would end up having a problem with anyway. So the way I see it, it almost doesn't really matter. They got their guy, and their guy was Okudah.
Yeah, and one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot with these trades, because I know people mention, like, why didn't you get something? Why didn't you get something for the trade? Teams are always trying to get as much value as possible in trade, and it's not just, I don't want to underpay or I want to take too little for what I'm getting. Like you had mentioned, taking a 7th round pick, get something out of the trade, thinking that you can still get their guy. But there's 2 parts to that, because one, what if you don't get your guy and that's all you got out of it? And the second part is there's cap implications to trades. Going outside of the top 5 is a huge cap drop between the 5th overall pick and the 6th overall pick. And going outside of the top 10, it's even bigger. So if you're Miami and you're trying to trade up a couple spots, that's actual dollars and actual cents from them. Giving up a 7th round pick isn't really that much to them. But if they think that they don't make that trade and they still get their guy, why would they give up both draft resources and money to move up? And even more so outside of that top 5. Teams try to get as much as they can in draft trade, not just because it makes sense to get as much as you possibly can, but because the risk of not getting what you pay for is so much higher. And the scrutiny that comes from making a bad trade and losing out of your players is even worse.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. The salary, yeah, you're right, of the rookies, that's definitely a good point at the position. Yeah, so why would they, if they think they're going to get their guy at number 5, why would they move up to 3 and potentially pay them more for the next 5 years? Totally get that. Honestly, though, I wish we still would have made a trade with them or offered them something, even if it was small, to, maybe they might have done it just for the ease of mind that they would have gotten their guy for sure. But I see what you're saying. Can't knock you for it for sure. Bruce here makes a good point. Draft's over. Okudah's our guy. Yes, he is. And we all hope that, he's the greatest cornerback of all time going forward. All right. But we do have to move forward now. But I do want to say this. Hey, there's over 40 people in the chat. Please hit that like button. It really helps us out. It helps to grow the channel and the DSA. Also, subscribe to everybody in the DSA. And obviously follow Kent Lee Platte, Mathbomb on Twitter. Where else can they find you, Excuse me. Where can they find you, Mathbomb?
Well, this audience is more concerned about the Lions. You can find me at Pride of Detroit. I write over there pretty routinely, mostly doing the draft coverage, but I cover stuff throughout the year. I do weekly articles on who does well and who doesn't do well each week. I'm also now over at Pro Football Network. I'm doing a lot of metrics work over there. I actually have a whole team of people doing work with me over there to write about my metrics. And then you can find me on my website at relativeathletic.scores.com. You can pull up any player's card from the last 34 years. If they've measured and I have that data, it's up on the site, so you can go check that out.
Wow, 34 years. That's insane. And this is this the first year that has probably so much inconclusive data just from the COVID virus?
Oh, it's been awful this year. I have about 1,000 less players this year than I had the last 2 years. And I could have more if I took the virtual pro day stuff, but I don't know if you guys know this, but everyone has run a 4.3 this year. It's amazing to me. So I just didn't record those because it didn't make sense. I have a stopwatch. I own a stopwatch. Everyone has their one on their phone. So when a guy runs a 4.7 and says that he ran a 4.3, I have suspicions about the tape's authenticity.
Yeah. The one time it's not physically there and it's the fastest draft class of all time. That's crazy. All right, so we're gonna move on to our second round pick. This one was a shocker to almost everybody, but Mathbomb, I do gotta say. So we were on about an hour before the draft, and we were down in the dumps because obviously we wanted Simmons and we didn't get our guy, right? And we're looking at who's on the board, and we're going around the table saying, okay, like who do we think we're gonna get? And J-Mo, I'm pretty sure verbatim he said this. He said, "I guarantee you, we're gonna take DeAndre Swift because that would be the worst possible pick, and the Lions are gonna do that." And then what happens? We go and do that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the the initial reaction that you had when we drafted DeAndre Swift, and what do you think about the player overall now that we have him?
Sure. Well, I'm going to preface it by reminding everybody the draft is actually 4 days long. I mean, we talk about the first 3 days, but that fourth day is equally important. So your day one is your first round, your day two is your second and third, and day three is fourth through seventh. And day four is the talking yourself into the picks day,
right.
Convincing yourself that every pick was a good one. But sometimes that happens in real time. I had made some assumptions about how the offense was going to look in 2020. And that's how I draft. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys when I was on the roundtable, but I base my rankings around what I think the Lions will do, what their scheme is. That's why I keep mentioning linebacker size, because that's a huge deal to Matt Patricia. Length at defensive end, linebacker, corner, because that's a huge deal for Matt Patricia. For the offensive line, they run with a Jeff Davidson offensive line scheme and Darrell Bevel's offense. That offense has always run through their guards, and they had no guards coming into this draft. My expectation was that they were going to fill that, and they did in a completely different way than I thought they were going to.
You're not alone there.
Yes,
but I had expected that pick to be Robert Hunt or Matt Hennessy. Both of those are very athletic, very powerful guards. I think Hunt was my third guard I had still there. I had Hennessy, Cushenberry, Hunt, and then Jackson that were on my day two board. And Jackson was actually off my day two board. But circling back around to Swift, he was the last running back I would have taken that was still on the board right there. I was not a fan of the pick. I gave it an F in real time. I don't grade on a scale. I grade on a straight A to F. I gave it an F when it first happened. I didn't like the pick at all, like a lot of people didn't, because they were like, who the hell is he going to run behind? How is a speed guy going to run in our power offense? That doesn't make any sense. This guy's going to get crushed running between the tackles. He's had 2 shoulder injuries in the last 2 years. What's he going to do trying to run behind Joe Dahl and Ode Abushi in the middle? So I wasn't super thrilled about it, but I've changed a little bit, and I don't usually do that too much, but I keep talking about how you have to kind of learn with new information. They took with their, I'm kind of segueing into the third pick. I'm sorry this is going all the way around, but it all kind of links together. So their third pick was Jonah Jackson. And it made no sense to me either, because Jackson's not the type of guard that this offensive scheme runs through. They tend to like their guards agile and quick because they use them for pulling and doing a bunch of other things on the line. They tend to be the guys that move on their line. So picking a guy like Jackson, who's a straight up brawler with terrible agility, and you draft him for this scheme with a fast guy like Swift, how does that make any sense? And it didn't really. But if you look at the offensive scheme differently than what it was in 2019, and you imagine that they're going to be doing something differently in 2020, where they're relying a lot more on their center to do a lot of that movement stuff, and their tackles. So instead of running through their guards, they're running through the outside and the middle. They're having those guys do all the movement, and the guards are just going to anchor. They're just going to be there mauling people and keeping people out of the way. You can run a speed scheme through that. You can run with a guy with speed and do quite a bit of things with that type of offense. So I didn't think of it at the time. That happened with their 4th round pick. But they really did start to tie together. I don't think that DeAndre Swift is a bad player at all. I think he was a bad pick in that the Lions don't have the luxury of building a roster through their running back. A pick that you take in the 2nd round should be a guy you expect will play here for more than 4 years. And a 2nd round running back is a 4-year player. You're going to have him for 4 years, and then you're going to draft somebody else or sign a street free agent or somebody to come in and take that role. The likelihood that he gets extended here is very, very small. But if they're really trying to win now and they think that Swift is better than taking somebody like Hunt or somebody that can block for him or trying to bolster the defense, then that's their prerogative. I still don't think it's a very high value pick. But I get a little bit why they did it once I saw their next couple of picks.
Yeah, I was about to say, I agree with you about the next couple of picks. But when I said, like, he said that I said that we were going to take Swift because after the Okudah pick, I'm not going to lie, I was upset. And the thing that I want everyone to realize is I'm not really upset with the players we picked. I'm upset with the decisions that we made. And the Okudah had me feeling. So I was like, what would be the most Lionsy thing that they could ever do? It would be just like, and I thought of it. It was like Eureka, a little light bulb popped in my head. I'm like, DeAndre Swift. That's the most Lionsy thing that they would do. I'm like, I know we're gonna take him. I don't got no doubt because I'm just like, it's just what they would do, and it's nothing to do with the player. Obviously, you explained what you felt about the pick, but to me, it's nothing to do with the player. It's to do with like you could have got a defensive end. You could have got a center, and like you said, it made more sense after they doubled up on the guards. But with Swift, I just felt if you wanted to take a running back that bad, you might as well trade back, get more assets, and just take J.K. Dobbins because he fell lower than Taylor. And you just take J.K. Dobbins, and then when you think about J.K. Dobbins, he can catch passes out the backfield, and he's very good at running inside and outside. He's a bruiser. But he's the same size. He's a different kind of back. So he can do all of that, and it would fit the offense. And I agree with you with the point that I felt that Swift was a luxury pick. And we can't be making luxury picks. I feel like if you really wanted to add to that running back room, you trade down, get more assets, and you take J.K. Dobbins. But to me, it just felt like a luxury pick, and that has nothing to do with how good I think Swift is going to be in the NFL. It's just sometimes those decisions, make you think about what they were trying to do. But after they doubled up on the guard, I was pretty happy.
Yeah, you know what? I agree, and I agree with what you said in the beginning, JMO. Like, I love these players. And exactly what Kent said. It's like you try and fall in love with the players because they're Lions now. So I love the players. They're great looking players. They look like great prospects. Can't wait to have them on the team. But the decisions we made were questionable. And, okay, so Ed Whiting says something interesting. He says, Bevel's scheme runs plays between the tackles. The guards are essential. The rest is up to Swift's vision. Okay, but the problem I have is when I watched Swift's tape after we got the pick. And by the way, we're over 50 people in the chat, so please hit that like button. It really helps out the DSA and helps us out. Helps the video get in rotation and get in those suggested sections on YouTube, so please hit that like button. But, He brings up a good point, but I don't know if I agree with him because I just don't get why we took this player then because he's not an in-between the tackles type of runner. When I watched his film, he has the most success running to the outside, which is exactly what Kerryon Johnson does when he's healthy. So my question to you, Kent, is there something that I'm not seeing? Like I've heard that he can do it all and he could be, he can do it all, but does that mean he can run in between tackles and maybe Georgia wasn't using him that way? I guess why did we choose him? Was it just that he fell so far and they didn't expect him to be there? So they kind of panicked and they wanted the best running back on the board? Or is there something I'm not seeing?
So I'm going to answer a couple of those questions. So real quick, just to answer the value question. I don't think the Lions got better than pick value for any of their picks. So I don't think that when you look at it and think, oh, he's fallen so far, we got to take him, will ever be a Bob Quinn thing. It's always going to be about, is this a player I want? Not about, oh, good, he's fallen this far, I can take him. They'll say that after the fact, like they did with Okwara. But every pick that Bob Quinn has taken since he's been here, with the exception of maybe Amani, has been a guy who should have been right about that spot or lower. Who did I cut off? You could talk.
No. Yeah, you didn't cut anybody off. But I guess the question that I really want you to answer is, can he be a guy that fits in Bevel's system and runs between the tackles? Is that something that you're seeing when you see his film?
That was the same. I believe it's a mistake that I made. That was the same thinking that I had coming into the draft and coming into the start of day 2, was that everything's going to be the same as it has been with Darrell Bevell and Jeff Davidson, because we have Hank Fraley is the offensive line coordinator for the Lions. He's a Jeff Davidson disciple. He's coached under Jeff Davidson in multiple spots. Jeff Davidson's scheme is very similar to the type of stuff that Darrell Bevell has always run. So the expectation was everything's going to look exactly the same, just different players. I don't think that's how the Lions drafted, which tells me that maybe that's not the case. Maybe we are looking at something a little bit different in 2020 than we had expected on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think that the personnel moves that the Lions made look like they're drafting for what they did in 2020 or 2019. I think it looks like they're doing something different. I know that Bob Quinn has probably already said, and if he hasn't, he will say that DeAndre Swift can run between the tackles. He's a tough runner. He's going to say all those things because they're good sound bites and they don't sound like you're disparaging your player. But you've already mentioned he's way better on the outside. He's better when he's in space. And I know for a fact that Bob Quinn brought that up and mentioned that he's a better player in space. But he's a guy that you want to get open. You want to get out where he can make people miss. And that's not between the tackles. That's not what you do between the tackles. You throw the guys that can maul, that can brawl between the tackles, the guys that can hit between the tackles. DeAndre Swift hates contact. He's never been a contact guy. Kerryon Johnson, even when he runs outside, he initiates contact with guys. He likes to hit guys and try to bounce off and spin away. Swift is the opposite. If somebody gets a hand on him, he don't like that. He don't like getting anywhere near opposing players. So they're not going to run him between the tackles as much as they're going to say they're going to. I think he's going to be mostly an outside zone type of guy. But I don't think you're going to be seeing it run through the guards. I think you're going to be seeing it run through Frank Ragnow, who is one of the most athletic centers in the NFL. I think you're going to see him doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this offense. And they're going to rely very heavily on the tackles to do a lot of the rest. And the guards are just going to be the guys that are holding people in place, not holding, but holding people in place. They're going to be the ones doing that, while the guard or the center and the tackles, they're going to be the ones on the move.
I have a question for you. So
Sure.
When you look at Darrell Bevell's history, he's had Adrian Peterson at Minnesota. He's had Marshawn Lynch with Seattle. And when you think of those offenses, I mean, they were bruisers and they were very dominant on the ground. So why do you think it is that now that he's with Detroit, he's trying to change that up and go away from that mauler mentality?
So somebody had brought it up in one of our chats. I forget which one it was or who said it. Things kind of melded together during the draft week. But somebody had brought up that Darrell Bevell was out of football for a year. So who knows if that's not all he did during that year, is try to find something different that he wants to try. I mean, we've all been stuck in our houses for way longer than we've ever really had to deal with before. We've all done some weird crap that we probably wouldn't have done if we weren't stuck in our houses. If a guy's unemployed for a year and his whole job has always been to imagine new ways to do things, maybe he thought that type of offense that he had been running before was making him obsolete and he needed to find a way to adapt. Maybe that's what we're seeing is him adapting. I'm not sure, and we haven't even seen if that's the case. I'm theorizing based on the picks that they've made. But you're right. How does DeAndre Swift gel with Adrian Peterson and Marshawn Lynch? And not just those two, but any of the backs that have been in those offenses. And he doesn't. That's just it. He doesn't. So you have to find another way to justify it. And my only way of doing that is thinking he's changing something.
Let me ask you a question.
My only other way would be they just think Swift is better than every other running back. And better by a large enough margin that it doesn't matter what offense we are going to put him in. He's that guy. Because it would make sense to get a guy like A.J. Dillon or J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor, guys that we've seen run in between the tackles, but maybe they just felt like Swift was the best running back on.
Yeah, and
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask you, off topic, what style of runner, and I know I might get chewed out for this, but what style of runner in your mind is a guy like Devontae Freeman?
From this draft class or just in general?
No, I'm just saying, what type of runner, when you look at Devontae Freeman, is there any comparisons that you can make to Swift?
Not really, other than that they're both receiving type of backs. DeAndre Freeman is not fast. He's a very quick guy, but he's not fast. DeAndre Swift is a fast player. He's fast and he's elusive. Freeman's the type of guy that took way too many hits in his career. Injuries were a big part of his career. He doesn't like to initiate contact, but he was okay taking those hits. Swift doesn't like getting touched. He's the kind of guy that just wants to be as far away from defenders as he can. And that's not him being a pussy. That's him being smart. He's being smart. That's good football if you're a running back. You don't want to get hit every play. Freeman's not, and I think other than being a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield and be dangerous in a number of different ways, I don't know if there's a lot of stylistic similarities. Freeman's a lot closer to like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who went to the Chiefs at 32. They're a little bit closer, I think, in style than Swift is.
So do you think they just took Swift just because they think he's that good of a running back, and it just doesn't? They'll find a way to make him fit.
No, I don't think that Patricia does that, and I don't think that Quinn does that, and I know Patricia doesn't. They took Jelani Tavai in the second round last year. Tavai was not a second round type of guy, and he's played all right for the Lions in his first year, but they're not the kind of people that are going to take guys that they feel are just so talented and can't fall. If they don't fit their scheme, they won't take them. They'll just let them keep falling. They don't care.
Hey, Nomis, did you have a follow-up after the Devontae Freeman question? Because I'm just curious, why did you want him to compare him to Devontae Freeman?
Still a free agent.
Because the reason why is because deep down in my heart, and I know people don't, I'm not got to be the guy that puts it out there, but I think they may not be confident in carry on, and I think they may be willing to move on. I think the Lions, I'm not saying this for sure, because he did say that he was going to have him as a compliment to carry on. And as we were told before, that Kerryon Johnson was going to be an outside runner. Although Kerryon still, to me, gets a lot of runs inside, I think maybe Kerryon might be that guy who has to prove it this year. And if it doesn't work out, they could possibly make a move to go. Because you have to understand, Bob Quinn will say one thing, and then he does another. Just because he says that he wants him here with Kerryon doesn't mean that they're going to keep Kerryon. It's just sometimes what they do. And I feel like if he's out here to do an outside run, or maybe he is better in inside runs at the same time more than we realize. But I feel like it could be a writing on the wall for Kerryon in the near future. I'm not going to say right now, but I think in the near future. I just had this strange feeling. I'm trying to say it, but it's just really biting at me really hard. I don't know why.
Yeah, so I made a face when you said that, and you can't see the face that I made. But imagine like getting punched in the junk while smiling. That's the face that I made because I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, and that's not a comfortable thing. I don't think that Kerryon Johnson fits. If they're changing what they're doing on this scheme, Kerryon Johnson only fits in that vulture role. He's the guy that's going to take those goal line backs inside because they only need him to go 2 yards. It doesn't matter if he gets hit. It doesn't matter if he initiates contact. He's only got a couple of yards. And Kerryon Johnson's perfect for that type of role when he runs inside. And I think that's what they're doing. I think that they're going to run Kerryon until they can't. And that's going to be it. I mentioned before that a running back is a four-year commitment, and Kerryon's in year 3. Oh.
Yeah, that would definitely. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. That would definitely be a disappointment. I think a lot of us are big Kerryon fans. That'd be disappointment. And honestly, I see it as well because he does do a lot of similar things as Kerryon Johnson. And Rod Love, he says that I saw the videos I've been seeing. He was running in the middle and outside. Could you send me those videos? I definitely want to see that, man, because I want to get excited about this pick and where our team's going for sure. So if you could send me that on Twitter, Real Detroit Lions fans, that'd be awesome.
Well, he's run behind a similar guard to what we got in Stenberg before. Solomon Kindley, very very similar type of player. He's run behind some people like that before. So you just got to get him space. That's all he wants is space.
Okay, I mean, it's just the stuff that I've seen personally. He's had all of his success on the running to the outside, but we'll maybe I'm wrong. Okay, but moving on to the next pick, because honestly though, I'm comfortable spending a lot of time on the first two picks. We could kind of speed past some of these other picks, especially when we get towards the end. But this one's an important one. So 3rd round, we go Julian Okwara out of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, Bob Quinn said that they couldn't believe that he was going to be there, and they saw him in the 2nd round. They're like, do you think he could fall to the 3rd round? They didn't know, and then when he was there, they were surprised. They definitely wanted him. So is there anything you could add to, or any comment you could provide on the Julian Okwara pick?
Nothing that you don't already know. Okwara is a fantastic pick for me. He's a scheme fit. I think he slides immediately into that jack linebacker spot. I've heard some people say that they don't think the Lions keep the jack linebacker spot and go back to a more traditional 4-man front. I don't know why you would do that after drafting Julian Okwara. He does everything that Devon Kennard does, but a little better. And for a 3rd round pick coming in and taking over a starter role, that's huge, being able to get that in the 3rd round. I don't see any scenario with the Lions' current roster where Okwara is not the starter day one. They don't have anybody on the roster that's better or close. He's a fantastic pick. He's the kind of guy that you want to throw out there. He's not undersized like Zach Bond or Josh Uche, the guys that were 240 or below. So he fits perfectly in the scheme. He's over 260. He's thickly built. He's coming off an injury, but it's just a broken leg. I know we say that like broken legs are no big thing, but in terms of football futures, broken legs aren't that big of a deal. It's not a torn ligament or cartilage that you need to repair. It's just a broken bone. Those set, those heal. It's no big deal. He's got a great football mentality. He's mean. He likes to hit. He likes to get after the quarterback. He's the kind of guy that you want in your defensive scheme, rushing your passer, if you run a scheme that requires you to set the edge, because he's really smart and he doesn't overrun plays often. He still does. He's going to have those rookie moments, but he doesn't do that often. He's real smart with the football. Keeps his eye on the backfield. I could go on all day about how much I like that pick, but it's perfect.
Okay, well, I definitely got to push back on that. I feel like I'm pushing back on all of them, but you didn't make these picks, so sorry that we're making you answer for them. But first, I want to say we had now it's down to 63, but we had over 65 in the chat. Please hit that like button again. So Mathbomb, my question for you is this: okay, if he's gonna fill that jack spot, all right, why? Okay, and this is a win now season. Why on earth? If you were the GM, why would you get rid of Devon Kennard, who's a captain on the defense? He's been a starter for years. He's relatively cheap at like $6 million. He has 14 sacks in the past 2 seasons, and he knows the defense and the scheme and the playbook already. And with this COVID stuff going on, it's going to be hard to catch a new player up, especially one that's off an injury, and he's a rookie. So please explain to me how we are a better team after getting Julian Okwara to take that Devon Kennard spot.
So there's 2 answers to that. The first part is, why would you cut Devon Kennard? And that's because he's not very good. You mentioned his sacks. That's mostly smoke and mirrors. He was one of the worst pass rushers in the NFL over the last 2 seasons, and he still got a bunch of sacks. He had, I think, 2 games where he had multiple sacks, and he was legitimately good in those. I'm not going to sit here and I said he's not good. I just did a second ago. So I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but it's not like he had no games where he was a good pass rusher. He's got a couple, but most of his sacks were just coverage sacks or being in the right place while Trey Flowers pushed guys into him. He didn't have a lot of wins as a pass rusher. He was one of the least double team players in the NFL and one of the least successful pass rushers in the NFL. That's damning from a pass rushing standpoint. So getting rid of him as a pass rusher makes total sense. Getting rid of him as a player makes none, and I have no defense for it. You already mentioned he's a team leader. He did set the edge, as much as I said he wasn't very good. He did set the edge really well. He's always been a good run defender. He was just pretty not useful as a pass rusher. Getting Okwara, I think Okwara is a better player. So putting him in there, I think, is an immediate improvement. But the reason I take issue with it, and I think I understand what you're going with it, is how do you know you're going to get that in the 3rd round? So you cut Devon Kennard hoping that you're going to get that early in the draft. The Lions had chances to take pass rushers, including Julian Okwara, earlier than that. They could have taken one of those guys with their second round pick, and they didn't. They chose not to. So I think that the Lions lucked out and got a player that fits in the third round who can step in immediately into that role. I think he's going to be the Lions' best rookie this year, outside of Okudah.
Man, you're getting me hyped, man. You're just feeding me the Kool-Aid, man. Just stop right now.
I mean, I feel like I would want Swift to be the best because he's a skill position player, but that would be nice to have some pass rush.
I think Swift is going to get numbers, but I don't think he's going to be the best player.
I just want to say I'm so happy you brought that up, that he's better than Kennard, and Kennard wasn't a great linebacker, because I got so much crap for saying that in one of our round tables. So thank you.
I mean, this is because Kennard, I feel like, and this is just a comment, he was like, we didn't have that many productive players on the team, and he was one of the only productive players. So obviously, I know the standard and bar is set low, but he was one of our most productive players the last 2 years, just from a statistical standpoint. And sometimes he did make big game-changing plays to help us win games, you know. So that's probably why. Let
me phrase it this way. I think this will drive home what I mean about how Kennard was and how his production was. Do you remember when Michael LeSure got a bunch of touchdowns? Would you have ever said that he was a Would you have ever said that he was a good running back because he was productive?
Well, okay, Mathbomb, for real. All right, well, this is too much disrespect on Kennard. I just got to step in real quick because that would be like saying, okay, Mikel LeSure, you know, yeah, he's not that great, but he's still the best running back on your team, and you still cut him over bad running backs because guess what? We still have Christian Jones on our team. So why couldn't we maybe have Devin Kennard as depth? And then not just that, we cut him for like $6 million worth of cap space and then went ahead and paid that money to Danny Amendola to come back for 1 year, or went and paid Chase Daniels to be a backup quarterback, even though we know we're not going to win. Yeah,
don't bring up that one.
So Andrew,
I got nothing to defend that one.
Andrew, I mean, real, you going in on that move?
No. As much as Andrew wants to pat himself on the back, yeah, no, I'm taking it personal. Andrew's so happy right now. No. It was still a terrible decision to cut him. I don't care what anybody says. And Mathbomb is 100% right. There's no way we would have known that we would have gotten Julian Okwara. So no, thank you.
I mean, if they wanted to move on, they wanted to move on. But it does hurt me a little bit because, and we'll move on to the next pick. But Kennard was one of the few Lions players that defended Patricia.
Yeah,
he probably defended him more than any other player on the team, and they just cut him like that. I'm like,
did him dirty, man.
They did him really dirty. Like they did him more and they did him dirtier than anybody else, and he still hasn't said anything bad about the team, and he probably won't. And I'm like, you cut that guy?
I got one question.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the addition of Julian Okwara, what do you think is going to happen with last year's 4th round pick, Austin Bryant, who a lot of people been pegging to do a lot of the same things?
This is a good question.
Well, let me give you my objective assessment, and then I'll give you my personal one. So my objective assessment is that Bryant's going to be the backup to Julian Okwara, and he will spell Okwara on snaps when he needs to take a breather. On those occasional moments when you have to have 2 jack linebackers on the field, I think he'll play the other side behind Trey Flowers, who would play on end in those situations. I think he's going to play the same type of role that Christian Jones did last year when he would play the jack linebacker spot for some plays. I think that's what Bryant's going to do. That's my objective assessment of what I think they want him to do. My personal assessment is nothing. I don't think he's going to do anything.
Right. Because it's weird. Like, he's a 4th round pick from last year, and you're going to bring a rookie this year to start over him. Yep. And then you already have Romeo on the team, so it's like.
Yep. So I was really low on Bryant. I had an undrafted grade on Bryant. So taking him in the 4th round was not. That didn't gel with me. But I don't think he has. I personally don't think that Bryant, unless he comes along way faster and way better than he ever did at Clemson, I don't think that he's going to have much of a role this year. I think that the Lions will try to have him do that spell role, but I didn't like the pick at the time, and I haven't seen anything to make me want to change it. He was hurt most of last year, which is unfortunate. But when he did see a few snaps, he looked really bad. It was only a few snaps, and he was a rookie, so you have to take that with that grain of salt. That said, as much as I didn't like the pick, and as much as I don't see him going from a personal standpoint. It's still only his second year. And I'm not right about everybody. So maybe he surprises and shows up and balls out. But from a role perspective, he's probably just going to sit behind Aquara and spell him when he needs snaps off.
Okay.
All right. So far, those are three great players. I don't think anybody here is debating that. There's three great players. We're happy to have them now. Happy that they're Lions. Hope they do great. Next, okay. So I'm gonna combine these next two picks together because obviously they're the same position.
Yeah.
So we got a couple guards. We got Jonah Jackson, and we got Logan Stenberg. Yeah, I don't know if it's Stenberg or Steinberg. I still don't know, but
Stenberg.
Stenberg.
All right. Don't want to disrespect him.
We just gonna call him Big Nasty because that's what he is. He's the nastiest kid on the block.
All right. I think
By
when
his
this
own
pick
request.
happened, yeah, I think when this pick happened, there was just a breath of relief from the entire round table because the first guard, because we wanted a guard so bad. We wanted them to address the O-line. Once it finally happened, we were like, oh my God, thank Jesus Christ. So, but first I want to say there's now over 70 people in the chat. This is incredible. So guys, thank you for the support. Please hit that like button if you have not already. And please subscribe to us and the other members of the DSA and follow Mathbomb on Twitter or on Pride of Detroit or anywhere you can find him, Kent Lee Platte. All right. Please give us your input on these two guards that we got.
So when they took, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about Swift, but when they took Jonah Jackson with their third round pick, I had no idea what they were doing with this offense. I had no idea at all. I was agitated. I was annoyed. I already said I gave Swift an F when they picked him. When they took Jackson, I had no idea because Matt Hennessy was right there. And Lloyd Cushenberry was right there. Those are two better, more versatile players. Jackson has played along the offensive line, but he is strictly a guard in the NFL. And I didn't see the type of versatility. He's pretty much just a pass blocker. He's not a great run blocker. There wasn't a lot to like specifically with him in a bubble where they took him and they traded up to get him, which made me even more annoyed because they traded up and picked a guy who I had viewed as superior or as inferior to two other guys. Jackson was one of the guys that I had mentioned before the second round started as guys I expected them to target. But he was the guy that I was like, if they can't get the other three and they're sitting at their last pick, I guess they take him, right? You gotta settle for somebody. But they traded up to get him. And in a bubble, didn't like the pick at all when it first happened. I spent the rest of that night trying to figure out what they were doing on offense. And that's when I first had the idea that maybe they're trying something different. But I had nothing else to back that up other than they made two picks that didn't make sense. You know, these seem bad. Maybe they're doing something crazy. You know, it wasn't a real. I didn't have a lot of warm and fuzzies based on that. But when they picked Logan Stenberg with their next pick, everything kind of fell into place. Stenberg is another guy that's not agile at all. You're never gonna confuse him with a quick big guy. He's not a dancing bear type as you sometimes hear for guards that have light feet. Very heavy footed, very heavy fisted. You mentioned he's Mr. Nasty. That is his brand. Literally, he has a brand, Mr. Nasty. He is a mean, angry blocker. I had actually said before the draft that I didn't think he fit this scheme because, again, I was making some assumptions about the type of players that they had wanted. But after they took him, it really started to fall into place with how I thought these players were going to be used. And if you slot Jonah Jackson at left guard and a guy like Stenberg at right guard with Frank Ragnow in the middle, there is a lot of stuff that you can do from a run scheme game. And both of those guys are pretty decent pass blockers. Jonah Jackson's a really good pass blocker. I mentioned he's not as good of a run blocker. Stenberg is an extremely good run blocker, but he's a pretty poor pass blocker. Neither of those guys gave up a lot of sacks. I think each of them gave up one sack in college last year. So they're really good pass blockers from a statistical sense, but from a functional sense, Jackson's really good at it. Stenberg was just in an offense that didn't pass much. So he didn't have many opportunities to give up many sacks. But you put those two guys together, and suddenly we're looking at an offense that has an identity, something this team has been looking for years and has been unable to find. And it's a fourth-round pick, and it took a combination of picks to get there. But once we got that, we have a guy who is extremely mean, extremely nasty. We keep using that term because it fits, and again, it's his brand. But we have an offense that can run with power and really force people to do what they want them to do on a defensive side. So they can move guys around And when I say move guys around, I don't mean like we've done previously where they try to bring the guard across the formation. I mean grabbing a hold of somebody and pushing them backwards 4 or 5 yards and moving them where you need them to be. That's what this offensive line is trying to do. I had made the mistake before the draft of assuming that the team was trying to mimic what the Philadelphia Eagles have done for the last decade, get more athletic, more quick, more fast, get that speed on the offensive line that can make you outmatch everybody, because I don't care how strong you are. If you can't catch me and get your hands on me, but I can get around you quick and get good leverage on you, I win. I had thought they were trying to do that. I don't think that's the case. I think it's much more like what the Raiders have tried to do, what the Steelers have done successfully for years, is they're just trying to beat the crap out of the guys on the other side, straight manned up, beat on people. I really like that pick with the other picks in mind, because I felt like it shows what the team is trying. They finally have a reason for what some of the things they've been doing.
But that's why I love both of the offensive lineman picks, but mainly what you were talking about, Stenberg. We need that kind of offensive line. I'm sorry, but we need that nasty, tough Detroit Lions type of offensive line. I love the Jonah Jackson pick, and like Real said, when they picked Stenberg, it was a sigh of relief, because a lot of us felt we really need to shore up this guard position and we need to double up on the guard position, and then they did it. But we got a bunch of mauler tough guys that haven't given up a lot of sacks and pass protection. But I think that Jonah can definitely start day one, and I think that Stenberg could either be rotational or be starting day one.
I don't think that rotation's going away this year.
Would you say?
I don't think the rotation's going away this year. I was hoping it would, but I don't think it is.
So you think they both are going to rotate?
Yep. I think they both rotate. More likely on the right side, but I think they both rotate. I think that's stupid, but I think it happens.
I was about to say, do you think that's wise? That's what I was going to ask you. I think you should just put Jonah at left guard and have Stenberg rotate, because I think Jonah is the caliber of a day one starting guard, and you usually don't get those in the third round. And yes, Cushenberry and some other guys was on the board, but I definitely think he can help in run and the pass game. So what I wanted to ask is, how do you feel about the Lions' philosophy of attacking the run game? Because I don't think I've ever seen the Lions take 3 picks almost in a row besides Okwara, all addressing, trying to run the football. What do you think about them trying to finally establish that philosophy and give Matthew Stafford some help running the football and having protection?
Oh, and they ain't even done with the picks in this draft where they're trying to address the run game. Their very next pick was addressing the run game. The pick after that was addressing the run game, and we'll get to those in a minute. But they had a string of 5 out of 6 picks that were just addressing the run game in some way. They're very much trying to get this stuff fixed. I know that their defense was a nightmare last year, and their passing game seemed like it was fine. The run game, as sad as it was still the best run game this Lions team has seen in the better portion of a decade, and it was still pretty bad, which says a lot more about how they've been than how they did last year. But it's definitely a part of what they want to do. They want to be a team that runs the ball and stops the run. And you can talk all day about philosophically, how does that make sense in today's NFL that's getting faster and getting more through the air? Maybe it doesn't, but that's what they're trying to do.
So when I think of running the ball, the first thing that comes to mind is, are my linemen able to get to the second level in the defense to actually open up holes so that my running back can do what he needs to do? Do you think that these guards are capable of opening up holes on the second level?
These guards are the guys that are going to open up the first part so that other people can get to the second level, which is what I was saying before about how they're more anchors than they are guys that are going to be on the move. These are the types of guys that are going to let your other linemen run free. So they're going to be the guys that are holding those interior guys, the defensive tackles, the nose tackles, while whoever's pulling, whether it's a tackle or it's you're trying to use Frank Ragnow in that role, or you're using a fullback or an H-back on the move, they're going to be the guys that are opening holes for one of the blockers to get out and get after somebody else at the second level, which is how you take a guy that has good skills in space and you get him more space. You get somebody to take the immediate block or immediate defender out of the picture. That's your guards. And then you get somebody else to take out the linebackers, the safeties, and the corners that are coming in. And that's what those other guys are for. So, yes is the answer to your question. I think this is the kind of guys you take if that's what you want to do, but I don't think that's their immediate role. I think they're just there to eliminate whoever's at the line.
Okay.
Well, so you said that the rotation's probably coming back. I guess how does that I guess, are you comfortable with the O-line as it is right now, given that you think that the rotation is going to come back? Because we know that like continuity matters with the O-line. And also, are you comfortable? This, I guess, is another 2-part question. So I'm sorry we keep berating you, but but we got to get these answers, man. Listen. So are you comfortable with Big V starting at the tackle spot? Because I know that there was speculation of whether he's going to be a guard or a tackle, and now he's clearly going to be a tackle.
I'm a lot more comfortable in him than I think a lot of people are. I really like the pickup of Vaitai. I think that he fits. Even before I understood what they were, I believe they're trying to do, I really like the fit here. And now that I'm kind of more comfortable with what they're trying to do, it fits even more. I wish I had seen it coming, because I was gushing about his pickup when the Lions first signed him. But if I had known what was coming, I'd have been really excited about him, because he's a mauler. He's a guy that gets after people. But if you have somebody like Stenberg next to him with Ragnow pulling, there's a chance that you got Vaitai and Stenberg just destroying 2 different on-the-line blockers, and then you have Frank Ragnow free in space going after some poor linebacker or safety who's trying to keep that running back running behind Frank Ragnow. And I don't want a guy like that running full speed at me. You know, that's what he did when he was in college, and he destroyed people. And that might be something we get to see a little bit more of. Yeah, Frank Ragnow was amazing last year. It got lost in how bad the Lions' season was and how bad their offensive line was in general. But Frank Ragnow had an amazing season. And
I think everybody knows that. Like he was, like he could have been an All-Pro, but our team was just too bad for him to get those kind of nods.
I think that if this is what the Lions are doing, his good season last year is going to be dwarfed by how well he plays this year. I think we look back at last year and think of that as almost a down season with how good he's going to play. As excited as I am for some of the other stuff that we've talked about, I think seeing Frank Ragnow grow into this offense is going to be my favorite part of the season. I like watching people get hit.
All right, man. I'm telling you, it's that Kool-Aid. You keep feeding us this Kool-Aid, and you're getting us all excited. But listen, the chat's gonna hate you after this one, bro. Because I'm telling you, I listened to that Pride of Detroit podcast, and you hate Quintez Cephas. At least that's what it seems. So why don't you go into that?
It always seems like you hate a guy that you're critical of.
Yeah.
So I was very critical to pick, and it's not one that I was fond of. And part of it is my own opinion coming into the season and what I wanted them to do. So let me preface that by saying he's exactly the type of receiver I expected them to pick. In that he's struggles to separate. He's a possession receiver that can block. But that's all he is. He doesn't have any dynamic aspect to his game. If you want to go read about somebody who loved the pick and has all the good clips of him, go check out Alex Reno on Twitter. He did a long Twitter thread on a lot of the good parts about Quintez Cephas' game. He wrote a whole article of it on Pride of Detroit. But I'm not Alex, and I didn't like the pick nearly as much. He ran a 4.73 at the combine, ran a 4.62 at his pro day. He's not fast. And I always get people who try to argue that a guy that isn't fast looks fast on tape, that they have game speed. That's mostly not a thing. What you're really seeing when you see a guy who does well on the field despite being slow, you're seeing other traits that a guy is able to win with. I know people really want to compare him to Anquan Boldin, but he's not. Anquan Boldin was one of the most physical players in the history of the NFL, if not the most physical wide receiver in the NFL in history. That's just not something you see replicated. It's been 18 years since he was drafted, and no one has come close to being the type of player that he is. But he ran a slow 40, so any guy that runs a slow 40 is Boldin. Cephas is not a terrible pick. I didn't like the pick, but he's not a terrible pick. He does have some good parts to his game. He's explosive off the line. He's got good hands. But he's just not dynamic, and there's not a lot you can do with a guy like Quintez Cephas. What I believe they're using him for is that blocking outside role. Matt Patricia is doing the same thing that Bill Belichick has done for decades. They like having a receiver on the edge that can block. whenever you have a guy that's running out on the edge, you want to get somebody that can keep the cornerback out of the way, that can keep the safety out of the way. Cephas can do that. And he can also run inside. I think he might take some of that big slot role if they start using a big slot. That's not something Darrell Bevell has done much of, but again, I think they're doing some different things. So I think that's his role in this offense. I think he's more here to help with the run game than he is to help with the passing game, because he's just much better at hitting people than he is running routes and getting away from people.
Well, honestly, to me, that's kind of concerning, because the one thing that about Jim Bob Cooter was the predictability of the offense. And I would hate for every single time that Quintez Cephas is on the field, they know that we're going to run to his side, right? That'd be terrible. I hope that he can be that Anquan Boldin role. I get that, he might not be Anquan Boldin, but, Anquan Boldin was slow back when he was drafted. When we had him, he was like 30-something years old, so is there any way, because I do hear that he has strong hands, and obviously, I'm sure you heard of this a million times. I actually heard you talk about it on the podcast as well. Jeff Okuda said that he's the toughest receiver, that he's ever defended, or something like that.
Gil Brandt said some nice things about him too.
Okay, all right. But I guess the question is, he said, people are saying that he has strong hands, and yes, he's slow. But do you think that he can possibly fill that role of the slot receiver, and maybe pick up some of those important first downs, short and third, like Danny Amendola is currently doing years old, and that Anquan Boldin was doing at 30 years old?
So I think if you want him in that role, what are you using your tight ends for? Because we have TJ Hawkinson here, and Jesse James was signed last year, and Isaac Nada was drafted last year, and we pulled in Hunter Bryant as an undrafted free agent this year. What role are you using with Quintez Cephas if you're putting him in the slot? Because Danny Amendola is better as a slot receiver to move the chain. He just is. He's not better on the outside. You got Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay on the outside. So if you're bringing in Quintez Cephas, and this will help alleviate some of your concerns about running to his side, because if you're bringing him on the field, you're probably 4 wide. You're probably sitting out there with 4 receivers. So you don't have to worry as much about people running to your side, because you're already spreading them out. You're already getting people out in space. And as much as people want guys that can move, that are fast in space, one of the ways to counter that is get guys that are bigger, heavier, and harder hitters, and get them out there hitting those small guys. So I don't really have too much concern about being able to telegraph it, because they're not going to run every time to his side just because he can block. They're going to use him in times when they have space, or they'll motion him. That's another thing they might do. They really like to do that with Golden Tate back in the day when he was here. They would have him sit in line or motion to in line and then block across the formation. I think that's another role, especially in the goal line, that I think you'll see from Cephas. As much as people want to see him in the goal line and making that possession type of role, he's not a big dude. I think people imagine him as being like 6'4" and 220, but he's only 6 foot and just over 200 pounds. He's not a huge dude. But I think that you'll see him doing some of that cross formation blocking, like they used Golden Tate, and actually Bolden did that a little bit too. That I think is going to be a really important role for him. So this isn't the guy that I'm sitting here going, they're going to cut him and they're never going to have him active on game day. I think he has an active game day role. I just don't think it's much as a receiver.
Okay.
So I have a question. I have a question off that. I mean, you mentioned, like, what are you going to do with the tight ends, if he's going to play that blocking role? And the first thing I think of is, for one, why did you invest a first-round pick in Hawkinson if you're going to bring a wide receiver that you want to block primarily? And two, we already have possession-type wide receivers, which, Galladay, Marvin Jones, these guys are the players that they come in and they make those crazy contested catches, but the thing that we are lacking most is our playmakers being able to create space. I mean, the windows that Matthew Stafford has to throw into are so microscopic that other quarterbacks, they can't do it. So why are we asking him to make those throws? And why didn't we go and get a speedy receiver like the league is changing to, like a Marquise Brown or an A.J. Brown, that can go and they, as soon as they get the ball in their hand, they could break an 80-yard touchdown.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. That's why I wasn't that high on the pick.
Right. Listen, Blue and Silver says Amendola is better. LMAO, you're wrong, dude. Look, man, Amendola's been in the league. He's been a starting wide receiver in the league for years, and this guy's a rookie. We don't know if Amendola is better or worse. Chill out. J-Mo, what were you saying before I cut you off?
No, like I did not know Mathbomb felt that way about Cephas. I'm extremely high on Cephas because when I watch tape, I watch him set a lot of corners up and get open. And when I look at Cephas, what I'm looking at a guy that has moves to set you up with his route running, and he just gets open. And when he's not open and you throw the ball in his direction, he catches the ball. He has like the highest percentage of catch rate with contested footballs last year. You know, a guy's getting 900 yards on a run-first football team with a quarterback that isn't that good. You can't really see everything that he's capable of. I think he will have a role receiving. I think he's going to be very good. And I don't really know about Marvin Jones' health, so we'll see with that. But I just want to know why you think he won't have a role like receiving. I know that he's a blocking guy, and we got guys like Amendola. But when I watch Cephas on tape, I see a guy that he gets open. I don't know how, because he's not. It's not like he's fast or he's Calvin Johnson or something. But he gets open, and when he's not open and you throw the ball, he always catches it, more than anybody in the league, actually. So I do think they picked him to block and be versatile, but I think he will have a role. It won't be as huge, but I know Marvin Hall is a different type of receiver, but maybe he isn't on the team anymore because of a move like this. And we still got to worry about our wide receivers' health. But I do agree.
I don't think Hall has anything to do with Cephas.
Now I'm saying like he won't be on the team no more because we have Cephas.
Yeah, what do they do that overlaps? They don't do anything that overlaps. They're completely different players.
How many wide receivers you think we're gonna have on the team though?
That's a good question. 5 probably.
Somebody's gonna be the odd man out.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be Galladay, Jones, Amendola, Cephas, and then Hall would be my guess right now.
Fulgrim's out then.
Yeah, Fulgham already got cut last year, and he got brought back.
Fulgham and Geronimo Allison are competitors to Quintus Cephas.
Please,
Marvin Hall is nothing. Marvin Hall is completely different. Marvin Hall is a burner. He's a speedster. He's a guy that you run in one direction, and you throw the ball to him. Cephas ain't that. They don't have any overlap between those two players. But he's much more like Geronimo Allison. I don't think
it was an overlap. I'm just thinking that it's about how many wide receivers you're going to keep on the team, and then once you do that, who's going to get the snaps?
Well, how many big slow guys do you need on your team? You can get big slow guys anywhere. They signed Geronimo Allison.
He's a big slow guy, man. He gets open and he catches contested footballs. Like
I don't think he gets open. So part of that is I disagree with your assessment of him.
So that's part of it.
So that's part of it. I don't agree that he gets open all that much. I mean he does on tape. Press play, watch the tape. Let me tell you about the last person that quote came from. Where did that quote come from? From a couple years ago?
I mean, the reason why he's so high on the contested rate percentage is because he doesn't get open. If you were open, you wouldn't have that many contested catches.
Yeah,
I mean, he gets open, but that's something towards it.
I mean, I've seen him be open and Hornibrook overthrow him a lot. So, I mean,
right. Hey, I think we should head on to the next pick though in the draft.
Okay, let's also try not to talk over each other, guys. Here's Nomis for a second. Nomis, did you have anything to say about Cephas before we move on?
Hey, if you feel like he's only going to be used like as a blocker, wait, I see it. This terrible run game we had for the last 30 years, we can use all the blocking we can get. So I said, can never have enough blocking on this team. Like my quarterback gets hit, can never have enough.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, there's 70 people in the chat. Again, please hit that like button. It helps us get in that rotation on YouTube, beats that algorithm. I don't know how it works, but, just the more likes we get, the better. So do it. Okay. So we're going to move on to objectively the worst pick of the draft. Okay. So this is so at the end of the 5th round, we picked Jason Huntley, running back out of New Mexico State. And I know you're really high on this guy, so I'd love to hear you just give me all the Kool-Aid you can possibly make because I need it for this pick. Because I get that he's probably a good player, but the decision making at that position and where we took him is unforgivable in my opinion. But go ahead, Mathbomb.
So I got turned on to Jason Huntley a couple of months ago because he measured really well, and as a guy that covers measurements pretty openly, that those guys pique my interest. I go back and watch those guys. Guys measure really good that people are low on. I go and watch them. Guys measure really bad that people are high on. I go and watch them. So Huntley came out of nowhere and he measured really well. His official 40 was 4.4. I think when it first came out, they were saying 4.36. I think when he first ran at his pro day, the official times always come out a little bit later. But he's fast, and it shows up on tape. This is a guy that can step in day one and be your kick returner. Jamal Agnew, probably out the door from this pick. And I know people loved Jamal Agnew when he came out the gate and made All-Pro as a rookie, but ever since he got hurt, it ain't been the same. And this is a guy that can do that. But he's also got real game day value. That's the difference between him and Jamal Agnew, is that you can put Huntley on some plays and do some neat things with him. He's extremely fast. He's dynamic. All those gimmick plays they used to try with Jamal Agnew, that can be a regular part of your offensive rotation. You can put him on the field when you need a guy that can burn. You can motion him into the slot if you need to. You can run screens with him. You can have him run those wheel routes that the Lions were never successful, but the rest of the league seemed to be. You can do that kind of stuff with Jason Huntley. So he's the kind of guy that you can use in an offense if you really want to get some speed on some guys. You want to take advantage of some matchups. You want to take advantage of slow linebackers who can't cover. I mean, they're never going to face the Lions, but they're going to be out there facing some teams that still have bad linebackers. And they get a guy like him out on the field running around. That's dangerous. He got compared to Tariq Cohen. And I think that's a fair comparison from a style standpoint. I don't think he's the same level of player that Tariq Cohen was coming out. Athletically, they're pretty much the same, entirely straight line athletes. He doesn't have great agility scores. That's because he's all about getting going in one direction and going fast. I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do with him on a game day offense outside of special teams, but special teams alone gives him game day value. So if you don't like the pick, just understand he's probably going to play all 16 games this year if he stays healthy. And that, for a late round pick, that's value.
Awesome, man. Mathbomb is dropping bombs here. This is what I want to hear. All right, but Steve-O makes a point that I think a lot of us are hoping. So Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round player, and he was a running back / receiver, and obviously he has that blazing speed. So can this guy be our Tyreek Hill? That's my question to you.
Stylistically, that's the right thing. That's the right thinking. Level of player, not even close. And I say that as somebody who really likes Huntley. Tyreek Hill was in another level as an athlete. He ran a 4.28, I think. And all of his drills were good, not just his speed and straight line stuff. He was all of his drills. Huntley is better than Ty Johnson. I see some people mentioning Ty Johnson and Jamal Agnew. I think that he probably immediately beats out Jamal Agnew just because he's this staff's guy. And I think that that's going to be his first role is on special teams. As far as Ty Johnson led this team in snaps at running back last year. And I think he was like 4th in rushing yards or something like that. And he led the team in snaps. He was pretty bad on a per snap basis. And the team, and it's not fair to him because he shouldn't have had that many opportunities, right? He shouldn't have been the guy from day one. But I don't think that Ty Johnson brings as much game day value because he's not a well-rounded player. He's not the receiver that Huntley is. He can go out and catch passes, whereas Ty Johnson couldn't. I think you get more value from a player like Huntley who can consistently do those things than you do from Ty Johnson who can occasionally do one of those things. Okay.
One question I just wanted to ask you was, let's say he is this guy that he could potentially be for this team, behind maybe he takes Ty Johnson's role, maybe he's a kick returner and all these things. How would you rate the pick, or what was your initial reaction to the pick, even if he can do all those things? When you see Bradley and Nay on the board, right, and even though we already got Aquara, you need to rotate in defensive players on that D line. So my question to you is, Nay was a guy that was, in the Senior Bowl, loved Patricia, was very productive in the Senior Bowl, and people had him as a day 2 prospect. For him to fall all the way down there and us take Huntley over him, I guess, are you in favor of that opinion because you're high on Huntley, or do you agree with the rest of the DSA that Nay was the pick?
I don't agree with everybody, and I loved and I was one of my favorite players. I really liked him. But by the time when they had took Aquara, they're done at Jack, right? They're done at Jack. So what they're looking for now is defensive linemen, guys that'll play on the line. Anai's not that guy. And as I said, they have Bryant and they like him. Whether I like him or not, they do. So Anai wouldn't be coming in here as the second jack. He'd be the third. And that's not good value here when you have a running back that you can take that could, by the end of the season, be your RB3 and be active and taking snaps at running back on game day. That's way more valuable. I think both picks would have been fine. I think that Huntley has a better road to playing time, which, again, you're picking this late. It's about what you can get out of these guys. And if you have a guy that can come in day one on special teams and potentially get offensive snaps, way more valuable than a guy who's going to play like an up back on special teams and nothing else.
Interesting. Does anybody else on the panel have anything to say? Because I completely disagree.
No,
Yeah,
I disagree, but I don't really. I'm not going to concern myself with that. The thing with me is that I'm not. I know Ty Johnson and Agnew haven't been playing the best, but I'm not, like convinced Huntley is just gonna come in there, swoop in there like Superman and just take their spots. He's gonna have to earn it, and those guys have a little bit more advantages being on the team. And they probably will still put him on the team because they drafted him, but I'm not 100% convinced he's gonna be able to take their spots. And I just don't like the philosophy. If you're gonna take Swift so high at 35, why are you taking another running back when Ane is on the board? And I just have like that. My problem was like it's like two problem. One, I wanted Ane, and I thought that would have been a good value. And two, if you're taking Swift, you're taking another running back. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just a lot because like some of these guys are not gonna play, and I feel like everything you want to use Huntley for outside of kick returning and like punt returning, if they decide to have him do that, I want Swift and Kerryon Johnson catching all those passes, especially Swift doing all of those gadget plays along with running the football with Kerryon. I want him doing that, and then use those other areas and passes for other players.
Yeah, but he's not going to play all those snaps. Somebody has to play those other snaps, and if you're going to have game day, you're going to have DeAndre Swift, you're going to have Kerryon Johnson, and if Huntley is the kick returner, then there's your third. He's going to be active on game days. Lions didn't activate 4 running backs on every game day. There's some game days they only had 2 or 3. So right there, you're already sitting at who's going to have play time. I can't rely on Bo Scarborough to remain healthy, and Bo Scarborough can't catch passes. He can't do anything with those passes that he does catch. Ty Johnson was the same way last year. He couldn't do anything with the catches that he got. So if you want to have somebody that you can rely on to be a dynamic passing threat, you want somebody that can catch those passes and do something.
Well, that's what we got Swift for. And then on top of that, going into last season, we were looking at this D line like it was, because on paper it was going to be devastating. We couldn't wait to get there. And then
it was devastating.
Well, on paper, yeah. I see what you're doing there. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is we got hit with so many injuries and we couldn't do anything. And then you get a guy in Julian Okwara who's currently injured. And I get that it's a broken leg, but like that doesn't mean he can't get injured again or re-aggravate it or get another injury. I would rather have a guy that was scouted as a day 2 prospect sitting on our bench that could plug in if there is an injury than to get some guy that's going to be possibly getting a few snaps a game on an offense that's killing it when Stafford's healthy anyway. You get what I'm saying? But I see your point, though. I see your point. I'm not going to kill you on your point, and I do appreciate you coming on here. But no, that's not a good fit.
Well,
I actually want to jump in real quick.
Sure.
So I originally was so against this pick. So after letting it digest, watching a lot of tape and stuff, I'm on your side, Mathbomb. I mean, when you look at it and what we've done the past couple of years, every single year we have a poor run offense. All our running backs get hurt. We're plugging in people off the street mid-season to play our starting running back role. So if I can get someone that can be dynamic in special teams as well as potentially a running back for us that's already going to know the system and stuff, I'm going to take that pick because I am so sick of Kerryon going down, Bo going down, J.D. McKissick getting hurt.
But we got
bit.
Swift.
Hold up, chill. So all these guys getting
shoulder
hurt.
injuries in college.
Yeah, so I'm
that back-to-back shoulder injuries.
Yeah, I'm so tired of all our running backs getting hurt. So if I can double down and potentially even upgrade my special teams, I'm going to do that because not having a run game it makes it very hard to be successful as an offense, especially like you're putting so much pressure on Stafford and our wide receivers to make big plays all the time that we need that dynamic presence in the backfield, and doubling down, just you're increasing your odds of having a successful run offense.
You're totally right, man. And you mentioned injuries, but that's one thing you can really look to, because what does Kerryon Johnson, Bo Scarborough, Trey Carson, Wes Hills, and J.D. McKissick all have in common? They all missed games with injuries for the Lions last year, and that's not great. They already let Trey Carson go. Wes Hills probably won't make the team. Will Bo Scarborough make the team with the amount of injuries that he's had in his career if they're going away from that style of offense? I'm not so sure that he does.
Oh, that'd be interesting. If they cut Bo, wow, that would be a big surprise. That'd be a big surprise. But Steve-O makes a good point. Bottom line is we have Huntley, so let's see what he does for the team, and I agree with that. And
I'm tired of subscribing to that. Oh, we got the player, so let's just be on board. Teams don't always make the right moves. Sometimes I'm not even talking about Huntley. I ain't even talking about Cephas. I'm not talking about Okuda or Swift. In general, teams do not always make the right moves. And there's people who are against the moves from day one, and they turn out right. So I'm just saying, if we think our team did something wrong or should have picked a different player, we can subscribe to that, because just because they on the team don't mean they're gonna be Pro Bowlers or anything.
Yeah.
You don't know what's gonna happen with these players. I wasn't nearly as low on Austin Bryant as you were, Mathbomb, but it's not looking too good. And unless he plays well this year, he's going to be a bust, and you would have been correct. So I'm not too high on Will Harris, and it's not looking that good for him either coming up. So, it's just, I just feel like it's you can't really say that sometimes.
Yeah, J-Mo, I think his point is there's no reason to beat a dead horse over it. It is what it is at this point. So I get what you're saying, and I'm with you. But listen, man, Bradley Anae is a Cowboy at this point, so we have to hate him. That's the reality.
I'm pretty sure that's a law, right?
Right, that's a law.
Yeah,
exactly.
A law.
Right.
The way I see,
the rite of passage.
Go ahead, Nomis.
I ain't want to cut nobody off.
No, you're good, man. It's all yours.
Okay, I was gonna say this at the very least. When you consider last year, when the D line was already injured before the season started, and then it got worse. The running backs will then follow. The way I see it, I like this pick due to the fact of the matter is, if this guy can come in and first things first, like I always say, he's the guy that's going to come in and challenge people for the jobs, let everybody know that it's not safe. Because again, like I said before, handing the same guy jobs over and then getting the same result does not work. You need to put some pressure on the young guys who are still looking to retain their position. And if he's good enough to do that, that's a good start. The other thing is, we definitely need the depth and talent on offense for Stafford to work with, because it's part of the reason why our defensive players do get hurt a lot, because they're at times, man, I'm not going to lie, I feel like our defense sometimes is on the field for 50 minutes out of a 60-minute game.
Right?
I really do. There's no way in hell you're going to tell me we're up 13 points and then another team comes in. I mean, when we're playing the game, then they come and take a nearly 7-minute drive, score a touchdown, reduce the deficit by 6, and then you mean to tell me 20 seconds later the defense is right back out there because we were 3 and out? That's which is partially due to play calling as well, and then no pass protection or run protection. Are you serious? We need some talent on the trenches and the skill position player. And so we can keep that defense rested, and they're not as tired, which means they won't be as vulnerable to injuries.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm with you. Okay, so at this point, we are going to move on to the final 2 picks, and we're going to lump these 2 together because they're both defensive tackles. So the first one is the it's the wrong defensive lineman from Utah because we wanted Bradley Anae, but we got John Penis in. So how do you feel about John Penis in?
John Pedicini. So the thing about him is, you mentioned he's the wrong tackle from Utah, but there's people that don't believe that. There's the people at Pro Football Focus, for instance, who loved Pedicini more than they liked Fotu. I don't know why he fell this far. I think he was more of a 5th round guy. I think the main reason that he did fall is because Pedicini's a nose tackle who's like 3'10". He's really small for a nose tackle. I think that he needs to put on some weight. I don't think he makes the roster in 2020. I think he's more of a practice squad guy that they let grow. But he's a very good run defender. One of the best run defenders in this class. It's not a surprise at all that the staff really likes him. I just think he needs a little bit of time. He might make the active roster. The Lions like to carry 2 nose tackles. I've heard that they like John Atkins. I don't, but they seem to. So maybe they keep him in that second role and Penasini goes to the practice squad. If Atkins gets hurt again or Penasini beats him out, he could make the active roster. But I think more likely he's headed to the practice squad. He is a true nose tackle. He has no versatility at all to his game. He is an anchor. He's the guy that will sit in the middle of your defensive line, take on a couple of blockers, and open up stuff for everybody else. That's all he does. Very thankless position, but he's very good at it. Like his upside, don't expect to see him in 2020. The other pick was Jashawn Cornell, and he's the opposite. He's a pass-rushing interior defensive lineman. He's undersized for a tackle, not quite an edge, kind of a tweener. He's your typical, I'm going to take a flyer on a former 5-star recruit type of guy. He came out of high school extremely highly touted going to college, and he just never panned out. Statistically, he broke out in 2019. On field, really not all that impressive. He's very much just the athlete trying to play football. He's got a lot of stuff he needs to learn. I'd be very surprised if he makes the roster in 2019, but almost certainly a practice squad guy. The kind of high upside pick that you hope a team makes with one of their last couple of picks. But a guy that you won't see much immediate impact from. I really wish they had taken a punter there because we're kind of sitting in a really bad spot at punter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think any of us are going to give you any pushback on those, but I want to ask you, what grade do you give the Lions, if you do give them a grade in the draft, and how do you think we stacked up with the guys in the division? Do you think we had the best draft, the worst draft? What do you think?
Well, the Packers are in our division, so we didn't have the worst draft. So
Exactly.
we're straight there. The Bears are also in our division. We didn't get them. I don't like a lot of the things the other teams in our division did. And I'll walk through them real quick. The Bears, they had picked Cole Kmet in the second round. This is the worst tight end class I've ever evaluated. I love tight ends. It's my favorite position to evaluate. Cole Kmet is a perfectly acceptable tight end prospect. He's a good athlete, but he is not a second round pick, and they took him there. They took Jalen Johnson, who I love, in the second round. They took Travis Gibson in the 5th round. That was their next pick. They didn't have any 3rd or 4ths. Travis Gibson's a high upside pick. I don't think he has any day one value. Kendall Vilder, another good high upside, low floor type of player. Darnell Mooney's a wide receiver, same thing, super fast. And then they took one of the best names in the draft for the next 2 picks, which was Arlington Hambright out of Colorado and Lachavious Simmons from Tennessee State. Hambright's a superb athlete, very good athlete, not a whole lot else. The Packers took Jordan Love, so they took a quarterback, and they're getting some competition for Aaron Rodgers. I hear that he likes competition and doesn't take that sort of thing personally, so that should be.
I love that. You know, the Jordan Love pick made my day because I know it's for the future, but it doesn't help them this upcoming season.
Not at all. They took A.J. Dillon in the 2nd, so they can't complain about us taking a running back either. A.J. Dillon's a little bit high in the 2nd round, but he's a good player. Big, heavy, superb athlete. They took a fullback in the 3rd round, so they're on a roll. After that, it was just a couple of guys that I think are developmental, so they didn't really get – unless they really needed a fullback, I don't think that they did a whole lot to improve their team this year. The Vikings – filled some spots, but they created a bunch of holes before the season even started. They got rid of Stephon Diggs. They cut all of their corners. They brought back Justin Jefferson, who's going to be a nightmare. So he's a problem. Huge, great pick. They picked Jeff Gladney with their next 1st-round pick. Good player. Not sure he's the best fit there. The Lions are going to match up really well with Gladney. So good player, but not a great matchup with our team. So we did better there. And then they took a bunch of guys that either didn't fit where they picked them or they were really risky. They got Ezra Cleveland, who's a super athlete, but maybe not the best blocker. Cam Dantzler, who ran the alleged 4.38 40 that I mentioned earlier. those videotaped nonsense. They took James Lynch in the 4th. Really great player. Hate to see a guy like him put with a coaching staff like that. That sucks for being a Lions fan. And then the rest of their picks were like that. It was all high upside, low floor guys, guys that they can develop. So I don't know that they get the most immediate impact out of all of their players other than Jefferson. But I mean, as much as I've dogged on some of the Lions picks, I think they did better than their opponents in terms of immediate impact. I think the Lions draft class does more for them in 2020 than any of the other teams do. And long term, it's probably the Vikings. But I think immediately and possibly as far as next year, this class is going to look a lot better stacked up to the rest of this division.
I definitely felt like I agree with what you said. We have the most day one starters. And to me, that's a win because we supposed to be in this win now thing. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely think we had the most day one starters. Like the Bears and the Packers, they did so bad. I was just laughing the whole draft.
Yeah. And if you want to see something funny, on our last video, we had a diehard Packers fan on, and he was trying to defend the Jordan Love pick. Oh, it's a sight to see. It was very great. I know that you were saying that, everybody tries to really defend the players that they get, and especially Packers fans, because they've seen so much success that they think anything that they do is just like gold. So that's 100% fact. But, as far as the as far as the draft goes, so those are the players that we got, but we also got a bunch of undrafted free agents. So if we could go a couple minutes, and talk about those, particularly Hunter Bryant, I'm told that he's a really great tight end, rated number 1 on PFF's list or whatever. So I just want to know, when do we expect him to take over TJ Hawkinson's role?
Never. So I'm not as high. I mentioned that this is the worst tight end class that I've ever evaluated. That's top to bottom. So I don't want people to sit here and think I'm dogging on Hunter Bryant for just dogging on him. He's a draftable player. I had a draftable grade on him. That's the lowest grade that I can give somebody I expect to be drafted, and he wasn't. So I guess if you want to say he was a steal, that works. Yeah, it's probably a late day 3 guy that the Lions managed to get. He's really small. He's basically fullback size. He's almost exactly the same size as Nick Bawden, our current fullback. Speed-wise, he's a little bit slower than Hawkinson is. He's not nearly as explosive or agile. He's a pretty mediocre athlete, but he's got really good hands, and he runs pretty decent routes. He's a much better prospect than Isaac Nauta was. Isaac Nauta did not have a draftable grade from me, but he's smaller and he can't block very well. So I'm not sure that he's going to have a role in the offense, which is why it's tough to see where he would slot. He has the best road to a roster spot out of these undrafted free agents, just because our tight end room is so weak outside of Hawkinson. Jesse James had a really bad year last year. Isaac Nauta is pretty disappointing. There's not really much to hang your hat on in that tight end room right now. So he's got a pretty decent shot to make the roster just because the competition is pretty thin. But I think it's a position the Lions might look to bolster when the second round of roster cuts come in. I think it's a position they might look to fill, trying to find another Logan Thomas type of more bigger, athletic type of receiving threat. But he's definitely one of the better undrafted free agents that we got. It's going to sound like I'm saying a lot of negative things here. Remember, these are undrafted free agents. These aren't, highly drafted guys.
Right.
They took 3 safeties. I don't know why. 2 of the safeties were really slow. They have a very big speed thing. It's just like size at linebacker. They love speed at safety, and they took 2 guys who ran really poorly. Jalen Elliott, I got turned on to really early, almost a month before the draft. I got turned on. The Lions were really into him, and they really liked him. But it's mostly due to technical stuff. He's a really good tackler. They like what he does from a technique standpoint. He doesn't have the greatest athletic profile. I mentioned he didn't run that well. He's not very rangy, more of a strong safety type of guy. They love Jeremiah Dinson. I have the exact opposite opinion of Dinson than the team probably does. They gave him the most money out of any of their undrafted free agents. He played for Auburn. He was one of their starting players. Tons of tackles. He's a very technical tackler. I think he's going to be kind of like Moore, the guy that we brought in last year, CJ Moore, special teams ace. I think that's the role that they have in mind for Dinson because he's such a great technical tackler. And then they pulled in Bobby Price, who played for Norfolk State, so his level of competition was much lower. but he's an incredible athlete. This guy's 6'3", has 33.25-inch arms, ran a 4.43. He had a 43-inch vert and 11-foot broad. And all of his metrics were great. This guy had, I mentioned everything for Raz. Every single metric he had except for his bench was elite. It was above 84th percentile, I think is his lowest one. Everything else is above that. He's a very, very good athlete. Really low level of competition. Going to be a pretty big jump for him coming to the NFL. But I think he's a perfect practice squad type of guy. You get a guy with speed and athletic traits and see what you can do with him. Definitely a guy I would keep an eye on. They pulled in Luke Sellers from South Dakota State. He's a fullback, a true fullback. He's straight up a blocker. Maybe facing off against Nick Bawden. Nick Bawden's been hurt quite a bit over the last few years, so maybe they're trying to bring in a little bit of competition who maybe can hold up to pressure a little bit more. And then the one that you guys were all waiting for, Stephen Wordle, long snapper out of Iowa State. So what can I say about him? He's really good. So he's actually one of the best athletes I've ever recorded at long snapper, which I've only been doing for like a month. So out of a month of data, he's like the second best or something like that. He is a really good athlete, though, even in his own right. Really good athlete. Not the best long snapper. He has a little bit of trouble with his velocity and accuracy as a snapper. He's facing off against Don Muehlbach, who he's coming off one of his worst seasons as a snapper. Everybody loves Don Muehlbach, and Muehlbach is not the kind of person to give up his job, as you've seen over the last 53 years.
I'm so sick of him.
He's gonna bounce back.
I'm trying to remember.
But he is the curse, man. We need to get rid of him.
I'm trying to remember when did Muehlbach start? I think it was right after Bobby Lane retired, right? Then we got Muehlbach.
And Muehlbach is he's the only player left from the 0-16 team. So what I say is every time the Lions get screwed over, I'll be like, well, we still got the 0-16 guy.
So this on the subject about long snappers. What in the heck happened to Jimmy Landis?
He got hurt. Jimmy Landis got hurt, and he lost out in training camp. And from my understanding, it was basically just a 1-year thing. They were like, okay, come in and see if you can beat him, and then he didn't, and then that was it. It's unfortunate that he got hurt.
Do you think this long snapper has any chance of making the team at all?
Yeah, they've been trying to replace Don Muehlbach for like 6 years. Don Muehlbach is one of the first players that I talked to when I would go down to training camp. He, what year is this? Going back a ways. We had some tight end from Ohio, the University of Ohio, who was trying to convert to long snapper. And Don Muehlbach had came over, and they used to have like players would just come right up to the fence. They don't do that anymore. But he would just like come up and lean and just sit there. And I yelled off to him, "Hey, how's the young guy doing? Has he got much of a chance to beat you?" And he turns over to me and just rolls his eyes. He was like, "No, he's got some promise. He just needs to work on it." And we started talking about how there's a difference between guys that look and guys that don't look, and stuff like that. But really cool, laid back dude. Exactly what you'd expect a long snapper to be. But they've challenged him every year, and he's beaten every single challenger. So until Muehlbach either gets hurt or retires, there's a pretty good chance that's the guy that's snapping long for you.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking that the guy we picked up is probably a practice squad guy. Like, just to let Don Muehlbach sit down and, ice his knees or, like, get his walker ready so that he can walk around.
We need to repair his knees, man. Like, we need to go in a new direction.
All right, guys. Well, hey, we've been on for an hour, 50 minutes. It's about that time that you guys ask your questions to Mathbomb if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, we're just going to, call it a night. So the first one I'm seeing, blue and silver, Mathbomb, do you see Jared Davis playing the middle again? And is he any good?
Yes, people always want him trying to move Jared Davis to jack. He's not a jack. He's not a straight pass rusher rushing from the edge. He can blitz really well, but that's what you want to do. You want to have him in the middle moving around. I think that's his role this year, playing inside. I don't think he's going to get his option. They might. You got to understand, the league has a much higher opinion of Jared Davis than Lions fans and Pro Football Focus do. He's very well respected in the locker room and as a leader for a team. He just needs to really show that he can do that stuff on the field consistently. I think he has a role this year. There's still a light possibility that he gets traded. Their moves don't suggest that they would, though. I think he stays this year, and then they replace him next year.
So
Okay,
you have him You got him starting next to Vi and Kyle. Like, who is our starting linebacker core? You have just right now, just hypothetically.
So Aquar is the jack. Your Mike is still going to be Davis. Tavai is going to play some Sam, and Collins is going to be the guy that flips between jack and inside, and Sam. He's going to move around between each of those individual roles. Lions play they play 4 linebackers interchangeably.
I was about to say, you don't think Collins or Tavai will play in the middle? Because I know Tavai did a little bit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, some. Yeah, some. They'll move them all around a little bit, especially when they want to blitz. Jared Davis is going to be the spy and the blitzer. So he's going to stay in the middle because that's where they usually put the guy that does that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they're going to pick up his 5th-year option?
I'm a little torn on that. I don't think they do because he's never really fit a Matt Patricia's scheme. He's still light. I think he got up to 245 last year, and it kind of showed. So I don't know that they do because I still don't think he fits this defensive scheme as well as they like to say that he does. I'm a little torn on it, though, because they seem to like him a lot despite that. So I would say no right now, but I'm not at all. I'm not married to that.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm in the minority. I really like Jared Davis. I just think things just haven't gone right. But Devin99 says chances DeAndre Swift is top 3 in the Rookie of the Year race. That's a funny question.
In Detroit?
In Detroit?
That says it all. Yeah.
Well, no. They came across a lot more negative than I had intended to be. So schematically, there's no running back in this scheme that is going to get enough touches to put them in that consideration. Right. So whether or not he plays well, I don't think it's likely that that's the case because you have Joe Burrow and I doubt Tua plays any. You have Joe Burrow and then you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So there's already 2 guys who are almost certainly going to be in that race. And then like 37 receivers who are going to get 1,000-yard rookie seasons. So it's very unlikely that Swift has any shot at Rookie of the Year in Detroit. There's just not going to be an opportunity for it.
Yeah,
I would love to be proven wrong.
We're still a pass-first offense.
Yeah, well, he's going to get some. He's going to get some passes, but that's not Rookie of the Year stuff.
All right, another question here. So Scott McKellen says, do you think a lot of the GMs conceded defeat to not having the time in camp to get much out of their guys this year and went for guys that they felt that they could get a lot out of next year? So I think he's trying to say, we're not going to have an off season this year. Do you think that GMs really were looking for impact players that could start right away instead of having to develop them? So
yes, I think it's worded a little bit differently. I think the teams wanted guys that are more start now than be better down the road. There weren't a whole lot of teams. I actually can't even name any off the top of my head that really went risky for like developmental upside guys. And a lot of those guys slipped. I mentioned Ezra Cleveland to the Vikings. A lot of people saw him going end of the first round because of how athletic he was and how good his upside was at tackle. Jabari Zuniga fell a little bit further than I expected him to. Another guy with a lot of developmental upside. A lot of those developmental types fell this year. So a lot of teams seem to play it really safe, really conservatively with guys that they wouldn't have to bring along over time, guys they thought they could get more out of right away.
Okay. Chris says this penis guy is very predictable. I agree. Steve-O says, how does Hunter Bryant compare to Aaron Hernandez as a football player?
That's not a bad question.
Okay.
Stylistically similar in that he's not a true tight end. He's an H-back, more of a move type. Hernandez was a fantastic athlete. He had way more athletic traits than Hunter Bryant does, and he could block from time to time. Not well, but well enough. I think if you're looking for like a dollar store version, you'd probably go that.
I mean, I know you're speaking facts, like, because he is, but it just sounds funny. I mean, this guy's an undrafted.
There's no way I've given up on trying to make it sound nice. You're either going to sound like you're angry.
Right now, you just got to tell it to the people, man. Did you like the Slade trade? I think it was very obvious he didn't want to be in Detroit and was falling off as a talent from Caleb Kaiser.
So I didn't like the trade because I love Slay. I don't think it was obvious he didn't want to be in Detroit. I think he did want to be here. I don't think he liked Patricia. It was very clear that he didn't like Patricia, but almost all of that came out after he was traded. Slay, as much as people want to hate him now because he talked mad shit when he left, Slay was pretty much a company guy while he was in Detroit. He told that company line pretty well. He would always talk nicely about the coaches, the coaching staff. He would say all the right things. He did all those things while he was here. He was never, I want to be out. He was never pulling a Yannick Ngakoue when he was saying, hey, owner on social media, I want to tank my trade value right now. Can I do that? Slay never did that. I think if he had acted like he didn't want to be here, we didn't get the trade that we got for Darius Slay. As
You
far
sure
as
about that?
I
Because he
think
kind of said on Twitter a couple days before he traded, he was like begging to get traded, and then I feel like we kind of got a low offer for him.
I think the offer happened before that. I think he was just trying to push things along. I don't think that. Well, again, that was only a couple days before the trade too. Before that, people had asked him about working in the defense. He always talked politely and nicely, but not nicely, but he would say good things about the defense, the scheme, the people that he worked with. And even after leaving, he talked nice about everybody except Patricia. So it was just one of those situations where he hated the coach and he did want out. So as far as do I like the trade, if that was the case, which it clearly was, he needed to be gone. You're never going to get anything out of a guy like that. I don't think it helped the team that much. In retrospect, we got a guard out of it and we needed a guard. So it ultimately helps the team long-term. And we got Okuda. So, I mean, if you want to look at it as what they got for it, I'm okay with the trade. I hated the time. Darius Slay was one of my favorite players ever. So not cool that he's not here anymore.
I think a lot of us can agree with you on that one. All right, we're going to take one more question. So Justin says, realistically, how many positions of the 55 are already locked up due to contracts or level of play? Roster's obviously 90, but how many spots are there the other 35 are fighting for?
So not a lot. We mentioned the wide receiver earlier, talking about what the spots that people are fighting for. The Lions only keep 4 or 5 receivers. So there's not really much there in terms of actual roster battles. The team's probably going to carry 5 wide receivers, 3 tight ends. I don't know that there's anybody significantly fighting for tight end 2. Jesse James has got that. So it's really only 1 tight end spot, 1, maybe 2 wide receiver spots. Quarterback spot is locked up. Offensive line's pretty much entirely locked up. We don't know who our backup center is. It's possible that's Joe Dahl's permanent role. But we don't have a backup center. We have Russell Bodine, and he's bad. So I don't think we have that role. So the offensive line is pretty locked. Not a lot on offense. On defense, it's pretty open. Cornerback seems like it's pretty stacked. Safety seems like it's locked. I don't think there's any real battles there. This might be part of why the Lions didn't bring in a whole lot of undrafted free agents. I mean, part of it's because they already had a pretty well-built roster. But it could also just be that they already have pretty defined roles for everybody. They don't really have spots to start putting people in. I don't know that there's more than maybe a dozen or so non-locked up spots, like actual battle spots on this team.
Got you. Okay. All right, guys. Well, we've locked up Mathbomb for 2 hours now. I'm sure he's got to go. Super busy guy. We appreciate you coming on, man. It's a really awesome to have you on and to give your perspective on things, because you are the man of the Raz. You are the inventor, the father of the Raz score, and I think everybody's using that in the league now, pretty much nationally. I'm seeing it from national news. So you're the man, So thank you again. Thank you to everybody in the chat. We're gonna give each person on the panel their last words to plug themselves to any shows that they're on or channels. We'll start off with you, Mathbomb. Why don't you say your farewells to the people in the chat?
Yeah, you guys have been great. It's always fun coming on and talking to you guys. It's my second time doing this, but I had a blast both times. Look forward to doing it the next time and answering as many questions as I can. You already mentioned you can find me on Twitter at Mathbomb, my website, relativeathleticscores.com. I write about the Lions for Pride of Detroit and nationally for the draft and metrics at Pro Football Network. You can listen to me at damn near everywhere now. Like you mentioned, I'm pretty busy right about this time of year. But I look forward to all your guys' questions. Hit me up on social media if you have something you want to ask, or you can always just ask these guys and they can relay it to me. That works too.
Yeah, we love having you on, and we're definitely going to have you on again if schedules permit. Okay, so Nomis, why don't you say your farewells to the people in the chat?
Oh yeah, man. Again, thanks for Mathbomb being on the show with us, man. Of course, you've been great, patient with everybody. So appreciate you. And for everybody in the chat, man, look, not every pick that we made was perfect. To me, every draft pick is going to come in with a high side and a low side to them. And I think it's just about how you're willing to wait and see what happens. Usually we get overhyped and assume the most, and then get a low end result. So I think that's why I try to do my best to stay in the middle with it. I kind of advise everybody to do that, so that way you won't be surprised too heavily, but you at the same time you'll be about, hey, I'm expecting this and we got this. So it's like keep yourself centered, watch as much film as you can. So God bless everybody in the chat on the panel with me, and thank you.
All right, wise words from Mr. Nomis. JMO, our other DSA member on the panel today. Say your farewells to the people in the chat.
Man, shout out to everybody that came through. Make sure you guys like the video on your way out. And shout out to Mathbomb for defending everything I've said about DeAndre Swift. Because when we selected him, I basically, I was like, I think I gave the pick like a B- grade, but I was like, I really don't like this pick at all. And I got killed for it. Because a lot of fans, they can't separate the player from the pick and the value sometimes. And so it's nice to know that some media members actually agree with me on that. And it's always great to have you on. But I did want to say to everybody in the chat, we will be back on the roundtable tomorrow. If you want to check out my video about how well we did in the division versus our opponents who took some L's, selecting quarterbacks and whatnot. I still can't believe they selected a quarterback. I can't believe it. But I'm serious. Y'all really did that? Y'all gonna help us out that much? Thank you. They could have took a receiver, and we would have been like, oh man, we would have been like in peril if they took a receiver, but they did not, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat, man. This was fun.
Yes, sir. All right, Andrew, say your final words to the people in the chat today.
So I just want to say I love your viewpoint and how you bring analytics to your stances, Mathbomb, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. It means a lot. It means a lot to the fans. My final thoughts are pretty much just love having you folks in the chat. We have 299 subscribers right now. Would love to get that 300 mark tonight. And then just if you guys ever have questions or topics you want to discuss or have us discuss, DM us on Twitter. Our Twitter names are the same thing as our DSA names. And we'd love to have some more topics because it's the off season and with everything going on, there's not really much to talk about. So hit us up with some topics and some questions y'all have.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you subscribers want to come on the show, come on here or come on to the round table, you're definitely welcome. We love, JMO says it all the time, Free Smoke Tuesday, Free Smoke Thursday. Listen, we bring the smoke. If you guys want it, if you guys want to debate something, or if you guys disagree with us, come on the show, man. Don't just blow up the chat. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. And it's really hard to gauge that just off of, however many characters you could fit in that one message. So we want to get your full thoughts. And it's really hard to convey the emotions that you're portraying in just like text. So we want to actually hear it. It was great to hear somebody come on. I think his name is Motor City or something like that on the last round table to debate me. And that was great when we were talking about the draft. So that was awesome. But yeah, thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Mathbomb, again for coming on. Thank you, our fellow DSA members, for coming on as well to show the support. Like Andrew said, get us to 300. There's 44 people still in the chat. Hit that like button if you haven't already. And we appreciate everything. Thanks, guys.